I've been asked to talk about the opportunities for METS companies in Southeast Asia. So it's very much going to be an overview of, first of all, our experiences in Southeast Asia, setting a little bit of the, looking at the mineral potential of Southeast Asia generally, identifying some of the trends that are going on in Southeast Asia in the mining industry, some of the risks, some of the challenges, and then also maybe some of the solutions. My credentials to speak on Southeast Asia. I first worked in Southeast Asia back in 1996, lived in Malaysia, worked extensively in China, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Myanmar, Vietnam. Also travelled extensively to a lot of other countries in Southeast Asia. Our company, CSA Global, first worked in Southeast Asia in 1986. We've got operational experience developing mines in many Asian countries, particularly exploration projects. Since my role as Managing Director of CSA Global, we've expanded into Southeast Asia, and so I've overseen that growth of opening offices in Indonesia, Singapore, investigating other countries for market development. We've got a little bit of local language capabilities with staff in Indonesian offices and also in Perth offices, so on. And so that gives us a pretty rounded experience. My background is as a geologist, so I thought I'd better set the geological setting first, but I'm going to keep it very high level. So it's a tectonic map here, and essentially Southeast Asia is in a very good address from a tectonic point of view. The tectonic sets the scene for how the geology and the mineral deposits can be connected between different countries. And so Australia and India are very similar tectonically on the same plate, and so we have a lot of similarities. Likewise, it's the edges of these plates, particularly the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate, which links up a lot of the geology of Southeast Asia. I'm sure everyone's heard of the Ring of Fire, which goes around the Pacific plate. Which ends up with these volcanic arcs which link up a lot of the deposits. So these island arcs, which are shown here on red, and thanks to Steve Garwin for this map, it's really the hunting ground of elephants in geology terms. We say we're hunting elephants when we're looking for the really big deposits, and when you can see deposits like Porgera and Oktedi and Batu Hijau and so on, these are all sitting on these volcanic belts. Now, most of the gold production from Southeast Asia actually comes out of these belts, which are very, very young. But there's also older belts which go up through parts of Malaysia, up through the Chatri deposit and so on. Not every deposit's on here, which also host major copper and gold deposits. So it's a really, really prospective region. When we're talking about elephants, they don't get much bigger than this one. This is Freeport's Grasberg operation in Papua province of Indonesia. The pit itself is about a mile across. They're treating about 70 million tonnes per annum of ore. They're due to run out of the open pit this year and then continue into an underground only operation. It sits on top of a mountain chain in a very remote area, so not without its challenges for such a huge operation, as you can see by the photo. And now that it's going to move into an underground only operation, look, I think there's plenty of opportunities out there for smart Australian METS companies. This is another elephant on the island of Sumbawa in Indonesia, and again, just by the sheer scale, these deposits are huge. This one's got about 6,000 employees and contractors working on it. It's owned by Newmont. Went into production in about 1999. Now this quite busy map, which geologists like, is really just to indicate how diverse the geology of Southeast Asia is, and also how well endowed it is from a minerals perspective. There's just about not a mineral there, an economic mineral, that's not in Southeast Asia. It's definitely, the mining concentration, as Justin pointed out. You've got Cambodia, who doesn't really have a Western mining industry yet. Indonesia, the Philippines, PNG and China to a less extent is where the focus of the mining activity is at the moment. But and other countries in Southeast Asia tend to have a limited mining industry. But there's a hell of a lot of mineral deposits and occurrences, but they're very, very underexplored. These next couple of slides is just really to illustrate some of the diversity of the Southeast Asian mining industry away from those core commodities that people speak about, and also to illustrate that it's not all done by the Freeports and the Newmonts, the Western large listed companies. These photos here of Indonesian domestic company PT Timah Resources. Now they're the world's biggest exporter of tin. They have onshore and offshore alluvial operations, as well as onshore hard rock operations. This is an example of one of their offshore dredges here. They have about 80 of these. Here's another one that you may or may not have heard of, Volcanoes. It's the Vietnamese coal and minerals company, and they're another sort of state-owned enterprise, massive. They've got large coal mining interests in Vietnam. They've got bauxite mining happening in Vietnam also. As you can tell by the size of the trucks and the digger bucket there, you know, it's pretty small scale mining that they're doing, yet those bauxite deposits are some of the biggest in the world. So again, the potential there is massive for not only for a company like Volcanoes, but for all players in the mining industry to get on board and help them. But it's, this is what a lot of the Southeast Asian mining industry looks like. It's not all large companies, it's not all state-owned enterprises. There's also plenty of this going on. This is in northern Laos, where these guys are digging out some oxidised lead zinc from the karstified terrain and using shovels. So move off geology and mining companies for a second and talk a little bit about trends. Thanks to Stuart Ferguson, who's here tonight from SNL, to give me a bit of a hand with some data. What this here shows is global exploration budgets in 2014 and worldwide trends. And really what you can see here in particular is the concentration. Well, number one, that Asia doesn't really get its fair share, particularly when you relate it to Latin America and Africa, which has a lot of the same risks, right? And where it is spent in Southeast Asia, it's very much focused in these countries with established mining jurisdictions such as Indonesia, Papua New Guinea and the Philippines. That's not to say there's none in these other areas. It's also a lot done by private companies and state-owned enterprises, and they don't have to report it. This one here is really demonstrates what I was just saying on the last slide, with the disparity there between Latin America compared to Southeast Asia. Now, Latin America does benefit from being closer to the US and Canadian equity markets, which are a lot bigger. But Australia, sitting right here next to Southeast Asia, is really sitting on a literally gold mine of opportunities up there, if it persists. This map also from SNL, it goes back to 2013, the non-ferrous drilling activity, again illustrates the disparity between where people are spending the money and the lack of drilling going on in Asia. Now, the only way you're going to discover something is to get the old lie detector out, the geologist lie detector out, and put it on there and have a shot. Interestingly, from the previous slide, when we looked at, China was saying that it was said that there was 6% or 5% exploration expenditure in China, yet no drilling information. And again, just shows this sort of, unfortunately for the guys at SNL, most of their data comes off public sources. And a lot of these countries, it's almost impossible to get any information on what the industry is doing. Now, one of the most important things for METS companies and mining companies alike is caring about the health of their personnel. And so this map here, CSA subscribed to International SOS, and I reckon it's one of the best things we've ever done because it's really helped with our key risk management, which has been around travel risk. And we use it all the time. It's part of our, anyone travels, we have to use it all the time. They're not paying me to say this, it's just true. Now, of course, in the Asian region, you can imagine Japan, like most developed countries, has a low health risk. Places like Thailand and Malaysia have a medium health risk. But other areas there, such as Papua New Guinea, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia and so on, they start having a more elevated health risk. The health risk is generally worse in the rural areas where you're still sort of prone to insect-borne, food-borne and water-borne diseases. but again, you can generally operate in these areas quite safely. Security risk is another matter. From a security point of view, Asia is definitely streets ahead of working in Africa, and for that matter in Latin America. There is still hotspots though. Papua New Guinea, more due to sort of tribal and local security issues. Mindanao region, the southern part of the Philippines, due to sort of terrorist threats, and then certain other areas such as the border areas of Myanmar, because it's up in the Golden Triangle and there's drug trafficking, and border areas of India and other parts of the country. Now, the best thing from a security point of view with the Mets guys and mining companies alike is just be prepared. Do your risk assessment, be prepared, and take action to mitigate those risks. Controlled risks, their political risk map. Now this changes quite a lot. You know, one of the things Justin pointed out was just how far Cambodia has come along in a sort of democratic process. Myanmar is changing somewhat, and you know, we wish them all the best. But as you know from this year, from over the last year in the news, Thailand has started to fall apart. Thailand would have been a very low risk country a few years ago, but now it's seen to be politically high risk. Places like obviously Australia, Malaysia again, Vietnam, interestingly, and India are seen as low risk. Now, the only thing with political risk, I guess it drives more long-term investment decisions, but also you can't do much about it once you're there. So you just got to stay aware and go along and play the game. Corruption risk. This is from Transparency International, which does their national survey. Now, Cambodia is considered high risk by some, Justin said, but look, they're no Robinson Crusoe in Southeast Asia, nor in most developing parts of the world. Corruption's from Transparency International points of view is everywhere. But look, I think what's really been good lately is in the developing world, the various regulation on transparency that's coming through on reporting bribery, corruption, all types of payments. And so that's the key part to remember for Mets companies. In our experiences in CSA, we've operated everywhere throughout Asia, but globally without being affected by corruption. So I think if you have good people in your businesses and you maintain good practices and you don't participate or buy into it, then I think that's the best way to handle it. And of course, by being the regulation that's coming on board in these various countries, and also by the exchanges and the places where you're domiciled, also are just going to stamp this out more and more. Where to go for help if you're a Mets company and you're thinking about increasing your expansion into the region, increasing your business development into the region. First and foremost, you can't go past anyone better than Austrade. Austrade helped us out a lot all around the world, in all different types of places. We've got businesses in Russia and Canada and so on, South Africa. But Austrade were very, very helpful to us. Their offices in Australia are very good, but also going to the individual missions in each country. Sometimes the mission will just be a spare desk or a hot desk at an embassy, but make use of them because they're really good and you'll get connected. If you're an Austmine member, then you've got access to this investment that they've done with developed with funding from Austrade, which is this smart mining network. It's a database. It's not a map-based database, but it's a database of a lot of projects, about 3,000. There's a lot of focus and good information on Indonesia, the Philippines, and India. And it's got quite detailed information about those. That's quite handy when you haven't got a lot of transparency about a lot of projects in that region. But it also has other information about trade shows and contacts and so on, as the slide says. From a mining industry intelligence point of view, you can't go past SNL. It was the old Intiera database, but SNL has now bought that, and it is a very good source of information. But again, you have to be aware that it won't cover all the companies, such as private companies and state-owned enterprises, if they don't publicly report that information or they don't have a data sharing agreement through the country. There's nothing like getting down and doing your own research and getting boots on the ground and going and meeting people. Just about every country has its mining club or sort of monthly mining night, and they're really important because that's where you get the local gossip. That's where you find out who's who in the zoo, and that's where you get introduced to people. And each place we've expanded, that's probably been one of the most important ones for us after doing the high level work through Austrade and the like. There's always chambers of commerce, there's always business associations, but also turning up to the key conferences. Now, in my experience throughout Asia, these are the best ones. Mines and Money, it used to be Asia Mining Congress in Singapore, but I'd say that Mines and Money in Hong Kong is better these days. And there's smaller and specific ones in various places, as well as the missions and so on that Austrade run. But of course, you can also come to us. So I'm going to move into, as I finish up, just into a bit of marketing now. So you can also come to us. Our headquarters here in Perth. Perth is obviously ideally suited in time zone 8 to service the Southeast Asian industry. Neil Reynolds, who's here tonight, is a specialist on Southeast Asian geology and has had a lot of experience in that region. John's our director in Singapore and used to run our Indonesian business. And Patrick's our manager of our Brisbane office and is also a director of Indonesia. Indonesia's had a big setback over the past 3 years, and so we've had to reduce our staffing there, but it'll come back again. It's a very dynamic and large industry there with huge coal mining, nickel, laterite mining and so on. And don't forget us globally as well, because we've been to most countries in the world. We cover all commodities, all geological terrains, all the way through the mining cycle. And we work with all types of companies, not only listed mining companies and private mining companies, but also with METS companies and governments and NGOs and so on. Just to finish off, I was just going to flick through some of my photo collection and my colleagues' photo collection. Just really to show you some of the diversity of the mining industry in Southeast Asia and up into Asia. These photos here are from gold exploration in northern China, gold mining. You wouldn't want to go down one of these. It's just got a hand lever brake in China. This is from lead zinc mining in China. This is one of the more modern mines which we were associated with building in China, a lead zinc mine. But again, it just shows you really, when you look at that equipment, that's modern drill rigs, and this is modern underground transport. China's mining industry is massive, and it's got huge potential for improvement, and that's a huge thing, opportunity for METS companies back here in Australia, because they need the help they can get. They're situated somewhere at about the 1920s, 1930s level in a lot of their mines. They're moving some of them up into the 1980s level, but their will to go forward is there, and it's a massive opportunity. And so CSA is quite heavily involved in driving that. In Indonesia, we've had an office in Indonesia for several years. Coal accounted for something like 60% of the minerals output from Indonesia. The coal prices have come right off, particularly thermal coal. So that's slowed down a lot. Plus they brought in direct shipping export bans. So that then stopped things like the nickel laterite industry. Those things I think will have to be reviewed by the Indonesian government because it's having a huge effect on their revenues. But we've been involved in the gold copper industries in Indonesia, the industrial minerals industries, tin, base metals, etc. In Laos, again, there's a huge variety of scale in the industries, from the very small scale here, again, Chinese miners near the Chinese border mining lead zinc, to some of the more modern developments, and then into industrial minerals or agri-minerals. This is Chinese underground potash mine that's being developed. So again, we've worked with some of the major guys up there as well as some of the juniors. Malaysia was where I lived back in 1996, 1997, doing gold exploration and gold mining. The challenges there were the tropical environment, also the palm plantations. Malaysia is really an agri economy. And also we had to bring in our own equipment, such as these RC drills and so on. And then you can see from the quarrying equipment, pretty ancient. Myanmar, getting a lot of attention at the moment, and is seen to be a very attractive place to go in and explore. They're absolutely 100% right. It would be a fantastic country to explore if you could get tenements and have a proper mining regulation, mining laws and so on. So in the future, absolutely fantastic, because it's hardly how to drill in the place. There's a couple of big mines there, Monua copper mine and some very historic mines. But when I first went in there in 1998, it was a 3-day walk-in with these guys here into the Golden Triangle, and I had to have a platoon of these guys with me, and then we lived in tents and we built our mine, which was for Mark Creasy. It was a direct shipping ore mine of zinc that it was so high grade we could direct ship it, direct truck it to China. We built it all out of wood. You know, the offices, the houses, everything all out of local wood. So, you know, you have these logistic difficulties in these places. As Justin said, a lack of infrastructure. We had no power up in this place. It would have been great to put in a SXEW plant, but there was no power. So, you know, you just have to make things fit for the circumstances. The Philippines, huge mining industry, but also a huge artisanal industry. A hugely populated country, so social and community issues are really massive. We were first involved in Thailand in the 90s with Padang Corporation, which was their national zinc mining corporation, but we've since been involved in the gold mining and also in potash and iron exploration. Vietnam, I think this photo was back from 96, shows a beautiful artisanal mining industry, you know, with all types of issues that go with the artisanal industry, but it also demonstrates the sheer scale. That's how these big deposits are found. Other people come along, put the drill on them, and then find them. In Vietnam, we've worked on bauxite, nickel, coal, base metals, alluvial chromite. I hope that that just gives you a bit of a flavour for the diversity of the Southeast Asian minerals industry. It doesn't always get talked about a lot in those things. We tend to focus on what the ASX companies or maybe what some of the large companies like Freeport are doing and so on. There's absolutely huge potential. It's underexplored quite clearly, and the risks aren't that different. And particularly for Australian MEX companies sitting in time zone 8 with countries where the business language is English, I think there's absolutely fantastic opportunities. So I'm happy to share our experiences any more that you'd like to talk about that. So thanks very much.